What does a flight cancellation have to do with the rest of your life? You're going to have to listen to find out.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an Ignited Hero? We've all been hearing about the microbiome and how important it is for our health. It's kind of funny, right? Only 10 years ago, we believed that killing the bacteria on everything was the way to go. I mean, do you remember those sanitizer sprays everywhere? And now we're gradually learning that, surprise, surprise, not really, we actually need the bacteria around us to thrive and even survive. The thing is that everybody's been focusing almost exclusively on the bacteria in your body that helps you digest food. And that is really important because if you can't digest it, you can't live off of the nutrients, and then you develop all sort of GI problems and you have to... Never mind. But research has been showing us an incredible connection between bacteria in your gut and your mental health. Seriously. For instance, studies have shown that the bacteria in the gut of an animal can change its level of depression. And more research is coming out showing that the same exact thing probably plays a role in anxiety, depression, maybe even autism and ADHD. Isn't that amazing? So I did some research and I decided to add a probiotic mix that helps not only mood, but also the communication between my gut and the brain. It's called Amare, and their wellness kit takes care of everything that I need. The probiotics that have been researched to provide actual tangible help, and the prebiotics and everything that those bacteria need to thrive and do their work. I've been using it myself for 3 months, and I gotta say, it's really helped regulate my mood and keep me even. And it's helping me feel less foggy too, especially in the morning. Look, these guys really did their research, and this stuff is top notch. If you want to get it for yourself, just follow the link in our show notes and you can join the Mind Biome Revolution with me.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and I'm here to tell you what I believe is a life lesson we should all take in. So in this episode, I end up telling you the story of a client of mine who came here to do some work. I'm actually going to share with you a recording from our really exclusive weekly chats that happen within our Ignited Hero program. So you're going to get a little way in, even though you didn't pay the money. How fun for you. I'm not going to tell you the story beforehand because you really have to hear it as I tell it. But I'm going to tell you this. If you can master the lesson in this story here, it'll absolutely change the way that you live your life forever. And I mean that, like, nothing will ever be the same in your life.
I think this thing I'm going to start with today is going to make a lot of sense to you all. We've talked about perspective before. This is a slight, not adjustment, but a slightly different way of looking at perspective, right? So a slightly different perspective on perspective, if you will. And it comes from the fact that Jessica, who is not on here right now yet, but Jessica has been here in LA working with you one-on-one. And I think, and I hope that she would agree, that it's been amazing and fun and really deep and also funny sometimes. And just, you know, a very interesting way of working multiple times a day together and being able to dive really deeply in. And Jessica was having a great time. She was really enjoying herself here, so much so that about 5-6 days into the process, she started being afraid of what happens when she goes back home. And I'm going to walk you through all the shifts because before she showed up, she was really anxious about flying and being away from home and coming to LA. And then 5 days into being in LA, she started becoming anxious about going back home because this was so great. And so we did our first exercise around how do we notice that I used to be upset or distraught about one thing, and then when it showed up, it was actually pretty good. And now I'm distraught about things going back to the way that they were before, which used to be my comfortable place. And then we kept working and we kept doing what we do, which is, digging in deeper and deeper and deeper. As the time continued passing, she realized that it's getting soon that she has to go home. And then she started really feeling anxious. And in a session, maybe 2 days ago, mentioned that she didn't really want to go home yet. She wasn't ready to go home. She was not happy that the date, which I believe is Friday, was coming up. And so we were processing and doing all the work to make that okay, or to understand that all the work here, the whole point is to transfer that to your regular home. And, we were exploring that. By the way, another part of the reasons why residential treatment has its place normally, but then you still have to figure out how to live at home with all the same circumstances, environmental influences, etc. So I get a message that she knew it. Every time she leaves home, some disaster happens. It's almost literally as if she shouldn't travel, because when she travels, the world goes upside down. And what happened is, it was a message that her flight had been canceled. I don't know if anybody can see where I'm going with this, but my response back to her was, isn't that pretty much exactly what you were asking for yesterday? Yesterday, weren't you saying that you weren't ready to get on that flight to go home? And then literally that day, that flight gets canceled. And so now you're leaving like 32 hours later. But it makes you sad, because it's another way of showing how you being in the world makes it a worse place, or makes things turn out in a way that is somehow lower vibration, or is not as good for others, right? And assumingly there are other people on that flight that got canceled. So now, instead of leaving, I believe it's Friday morning, she's leaving Saturday evening. So she literally got almost 2 full additional days in LA. And sitting here in a session, the moment I made that connection for her, she said, yeah, but that's a coincidence. And here's where I pause, and this is why I want to share this with everybody here. I don't know if you caught this along the story, but I'm going to break this down for you step by step. Before coming to LA, a person can be nervous about what the trip will be like, what the flight will be like, what it would be like to be away from home, what it must be like to be with strangers who you've never really met in person, and what the experience would feel like. And then you get to the experience and it's better than you imagined, so you start feeling good in that experience. But because you tend to focus on negative elements, negative aspects of your experience in life, immediately you transition to saying, oh, but now I have to go back to that older place. And in that older place, I feel bad about who I am. So that was the first shift. And then you say, okay, I'm so good, I'm so comfortable in this place, I want to stay here longer. And the flight gets canceled. But because your orientation to the world is, I pay attention to what goes wrong rather than paying attention to what goes right, when the flight gets canceled, the first way to look at it, the first orientation is to say, you see, when I booked on a flight, flights get canceled. Instead of saying, I literally just wished to stay longer in this place. And now, without me having to do anything, the airline essentially delivered me a gift of saying, here are 2 additional days. No change fees, no having to make phone calls, nothing. You wished it and it became so. And so you have to write it off, because you pay attention to only what is bad in the world, or primarily to what is bad in the world. And so what you do is you shift, you say, but that's just a coincidence. That didn't happen on purpose. It is amazing what happens in the world where we make a decision and then practice. So it's one then the other. We make a decision and then we practice only paying attention to the positive aspects of what goes on in the world. Because that entire story could have taken on a completely different light, a completely different color, right? It could have completely transformed the entire experience if what I did instead was always only focused on the positive of what can happen. So while being in the UK, the idea would be, oh my God, I'm so excited about what the experience in LA would be like. And then I go to LA and it's great and it's fun. And I go, oh my God, I'm so excited to take all the lessons that I learned here and bring them back home so that my home life can be transformed. I'm a little sad because I've had so much fun here that while I'm really excited to bring the lessons home and improve my relationship and the place I live and my environment and all those things, I wish I had more time here. And then the flight gets canceled and go, oh my God, not only did I have a great time here, I get to extend it without having done anything or having to pay any more money. And then on top of that, I get to go home and bring all the lessons. So I got everything I wanted. I got the fun and exciting trip that taught me a lot that I'm going to get to bring back home. But I even won a few extra days in Los Angeles as a way to celebrate everything that had just happened. Can everybody see how different those two stories are? Yeah, right? It's pretty obvious that whoever is living in both of those experiences has a completely different feeling about how their life is unfolding. Is that correct? And the important thing to point out is that the exact same events, the same actual things are happening in both stories. There is no difference in what happened. The only difference is in the perspective and the interpretation. And the reason I want to share that is there are always stories. So that was one version, and I could tell you 500 other stories from my life, and I could pick stories from your life and have the exact same translation from the negative to the positive. And so what we have to do is we have to make a choice, and then we have to practice telling the story of our life from this positive angle. And I don't believe it's Pollyannic, because it's not as if we have to ignore the negativity. We just have to choose to bias ourselves to focus more on the positive. I hope that makes sense, and it'll have to do with some of the questions that we talk about here today. This is a thread that people who've been on here can tell you for a while, has been pulled through everything here for a while. And it's something that I'm going to put a lot of focus on regardless of what stories we tell, because it is a matter of practice, right? I didn't used to focus on the positive only myself. I used to focus on the negative. I used to focus on what wasn't working out right, and I talked about it as just being pragmatic, which I still consider myself pragmatic, but the problem was that if you bias yourself towards the negative, your pragmatism gets pessimistic, because your pragmatism leans towards the things that are not going to work out. So if you can somehow magically have a completely balanced view, that might be better, but I'd rather err on the side of increased optimism, because then I can still be a pragmatist, I can still be responsible, but I can make choices that will lead me towards victory instead of constantly looking at what I have to fix and what is wrong. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Okay, so did you get it? Let me recap a little bit. Here's a client of mine who came out to LA from the UK. I don't know if you think about that, right? That's like a 14-hour flight, a lot of money for the flying, taking about 2 weeks out of your family. By the way, coming and working with me multiple times a day here in Los Angeles is not cheap, so spending all the money on that. All of that to do the deep work that, let's just be honest about it, is more easily completed in person, right? I mean, like, don't you agree that almost everything is better in person? We're texting people all the time, we're on social media and all that stuff, so we feel like we're connected, but when you really sit in a room with somebody, it's just different. So she went through all that work, and I shared it with you that she was actually really anxious before coming out here. She didn't know if she was going to like being away from her family and her husband for 2 weeks doing this. She didn't know if she was going to like LA. She didn't know how she was going to handle the flight. All of that was causing her anxiety. And then she came here and found out it was amazing. So amazing, she was actually now upset about having to go home. And let's be clear, getting your flight canceled might be really shitty. Like, nobody really wants their plans changed last minute, especially not plans they've made months in advance, unless you can also see the beauty in it. I mean, did you guys catch in that story just how that was probably some of the most powerful manifestation in the world? She said in one sitting, I wish I didn't have to leave Friday. And then that became a canceled flight. I mean, I don't care if you believe that her wishing actually made it so. I don't even know if I believe that her wishing made it so, because that's kind of insane to think about. That you could just say, hey, I wish I had a couple of extra days in LA. And then you get an email from your airline saying, we're sorry, but your early morning flight for Friday got canceled. It's insane. I have a hard time with it. If you know my wife, Sophie, she doesn't have a hard time with it. She lives this way. All the more power to her. I'm just happy to be married to her. So whether you believe that her wishing made it so or not, doesn't really matter in this context to me. What matters is that we at least leave ourselves open to accepting the amazing miracles that life just throws at us. What if it was a coincidence? How cool of a coincidence is that? There are so many examples of this, and the thing is that we lean, I believe, most of us lean, and we have this implicit subconscious decision to focus on the negative versus the positive aspects of our lives. This is akin to that idea that you might have heard before, that life is happening to you instead of for you, right? That's the negative way of looking at it. Oh my God, everything has happened to me. I have to go to work. I have to catch this flight. I have to go meet this person. Instead of, I get to go do my job. I get to get on this flight. I get to hang out with this person for coffee for an hour. The switch in language and the switch in internal perception is massive. I mean, did the universe literally just cancel this woman's flight so that she could get what she wanted, a couple of days in LA on top of her trip? Maybe. And again, if not, still one of the coolest coincidences I've seen in a long, long time. Now, you might be listening and saying, oh my God, this is so cool, such a great story, but how does this apply in my life? And for that, I'd like to extend to you a whole bunch of examples from my life of how this has fit. And I want to see if any of these resonate, because maybe you haven't had canceled flights happen that extended some of your favorite trips ever. Maybe not. But, when I was 25, I got in a motorcycle accident that completely broke, just snapped my tibia and my fibula, caused the worst pain of my life, and had me not walking for a year. But it was actually a little worse than that. Not a little, a lot worse than that. Because it's also how they found like a half a pound to a quarter pound of coke on me, and what led to me ending up spending a year in jail after a year in rehab. Right? And that's absolutely one way to tell the story. Worst pain of my life. My parents found out I was a drug dealer, got arrested, had to pay tens of thousands of dollars to an attorney and then tens of thousands of dollars to rehabs, completely threw a wrench in my life and had me for a long part of my life be a 9-time convicted felon. It's a pretty fucked up accident. I don't know if you agree or not, but it was in my life at the time. But the thing is, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have cleaned up. At least not then. I would have just ended up back in my studio that day, doing more drugs, getting more fucked up, selling more for a while. And the fact that I got cleaned up meant that I had to get out of jail at some point and figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And I went back to school. I never thought I was going to go back to school. I kind of swore off school before these things happened. And then because I went to school and was really motivated now, and I did really, really well in school, I got to go from Cal State Long Beach to UCLA and get my PhD in psychology. And I got to study addiction and really dive in very deeply into what happened in my own drug use. And that was the thing that led not only to me meeting Sophie that first year at UCLA, but also to becoming this addiction and self-help expert. All because of that accident. So am I sorry for that accident, or am I happy that that accident happened? It's kind of all a matter of perspective. And I'm doing this in hindsight, but what if I could do it in real time? Now, when Sophie found out I cheated, because I went and told her that I cheated on her, she broke up with me. And that following year was the biggest year of self-discovery, the biggest year of me trying to figure out what the hell went wrong. So am I sorry that I told her and that she broke up with me, or am I happy that I got that year to really figure out more things about me? But if you know our story, you know that wasn't the last time I got caught. So I got caught again, what was it, 3-4 years after that. And that last time that Sophie caught me with all the online emails and the websites, it was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I can, even just talking about it right now, I can feel my heart in my stomach. I couldn't breathe. It was hard swallowing. We were on the brink of losing everything, and she was pregnant with Kai, who is like one of my favorite humans on the face of the earth now. But the thing is, at that moment also allowed me to finally clear away decades of shame and self-doubt and intimacy blocks and all these other things that I didn't even know I had inside because I thought I was doing okay. So am I happy she found out about this, or am I upset about it? Well, what about the business that I started, the rehab center that I co-founded with a partner that I was so excited about? I mean, it's hard to put into words how happy I was. I had my first business. I was working with this guy I really respected, and we blew this thing up. I mean, the first 2-3 years of the business, we were flying. We're getting coverage, dozens and dozens of people coming and getting help. It was pretty freaking incredible. And then the last 1.5 to 2 years were a nightmare, and the thing closed. And destroyed relationships with each one of the people that were supposed to become four of my partners that I kind of still don't talk to this day. Now, that was a painful experience. I don't know how many of you have had a business close. It was gut-wrenching for a year and a half, 2 years, just trying to hold on to this thing and not being able to understand how to, and then eventually having to give up. I'd never given up on anything in my life before, guys. And I had to close that business. But if I didn't close that business, I would have never started Ignited. And there would be no podcast. You wouldn't be listening to this right now. There would be no Ignited Hero program. There would be no Abstinence Smith book. So am I really sorry that that business closed? Or am I happy that I had the opportunity to learn from it and move forward? Can you see that you can take almost any event in your life and draw from it the positive or the negative? And the question is, would my life be better if I sat around and thought about how terrible that accident was, or how sad I am that Sophie found out about my cheating 3 times, or how mad, upset, destroyed, underappreciated, misunderstood I feel about the closing of my first business? Would my life be better if I focus on the positive lessons from each one of those things and move forward? For me, at least, the answer is pretty freaking clear. And it's my job is to take the lessons, focus on the positive, and move forward as deliberately as I can to keep making my life better. Because in each one of those stories, my life got better when I got to the other side of that experience. Just like I hope my client's life will be better because she just got 2 extra days here in Los Angeles having this amazing experience. So here's my mission for you, should you choose to accept it. Your job right now is to go to your computer or your phone and sign up for our 21-day habit reset challenge. And then make this leaning towards the negative, the habit you're trying to change. Make leaning towards looking at the negative things in my life the habit you resolve and fix forever in April. Because, like I said earlier, if you can fix this part of your life, you're going to begin living the most content, happy, and accomplished life ever, even if none of your circumstances in life change. But listen closely, because here's where the real magic is. All of your circumstances will change when you get this done too. So not only will your perception of it be better, but your life will become better. Why? Because people will be drawn to you instead of scared of you. Relationships will prosper and opportunities will come out of nowhere because you're finally always going to be able to see them as they come your way instead of looking at all the things that are missing and all the things that have gone wrong. So look, I don't have a call to action like this for you guys normally, but this isn't going to come always. I don't know when we'll do this next 21-day habit reset. And you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your partner, you owe it to your kids, you owe it to your friends, you owe it to your boss and your colleagues to finally be content, happy, joyous about everything that's happening in your life right now. So I challenge you to join this challenge. I can't wait to see you on it. April 1st, we're going to start. By the time this goes on, I think there's only a week left to enroll. So hurry up. Love you all. Thank you for sitting here and tuning in. And you know what? I hope your next flight gets canceled. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.